Day 150. I've been doing this for 150 days straight, where I either sit here or I talk about a lesson or a story or just ramble about things. And it's kind of hard trying to think about something every single day. So today I was sitting here and I was struggling to decide what I wanted to talk about. And I thought about talking about maybe what I do when I'm creatively drained, which is basically putting on music and blasting up into my ears and embarrassingly dancing around in my room. But then I thought about why I want to do what I want to do and why I do this channel, and it kind of stems from this movie. Obviously not all from this movie, but it has a big part to play. You see, I didn't have a lot of role models or people to look up to in my life, not a lot of guidance. And unfortunately, I didn't learn a lot from a lot of people. So movies is where I learned a big chunk of who I am. Not to say there weren't people that I didn't learn from and listen to, obviously, but a big chunk of it was movies and even games. And this movie is my all-time favourite, Big Fish. If you haven't watched it, I suggest you tap right off of this and go watch it, because it is such an amazing film. Now, if you're still here, I'm going to talk about it, so spoilers, I guess. But basically, it's about this fella here, and he basically tells stories to his son. And these stories are pretty crazy, they seem a bit over-exaggeratory, maybe a bit much. And they seem like fairy tales to his son. And as he grows up, he kind of realizes that these stories are, over-exaggerations, they're lies, they're fairy tales. And so most of the movie is basically about his life and how it goes through this magical life. And as the movie goes on, the father, he gets old and he is dying. And as the movie goes on, the son kind of just gets more and more annoyed at his dad for telling these stories all the time, these over-exaggerations, these lies. And he has a lot of hatred towards his dad for these things. Towards the end of the film, it shows his dad pretty much deteriorating and he's gonna die. And he's sitting with his dad in the hospital bed and he tells him one last story. And this story is about how they escape the hospital and they get in this nice beautiful car that he used to have when he was younger, and they get shooting off and then they go to this real nice lake where he would tell stories about certain things. And all the people from all these different stories and these fairy tales are there. And they're there to see him off. And he lets him go into this lake and he turns into this big fish. And he goes. And this is the story that the son is talking. The son is telling the story now to the dad. He passes away. And the next scene is the funeral. And the son comes in to the funeral and he starts to look around. He sees the twins from that story and he sees the giant from this story and the circus person from this story. And he starts to realize that these stories weren't lies. They may have been over-exaggerated to a certain degree, but it doesn't seem like any of them were lies. He then realizes that actually his dad's never been lying. He's just a really good storyteller. I've loved this film since the day I watched it. No other film has ever really come above it. At one point in time in my life, I got taught to hate my dad for reasons that were not true. They were lies. And when my dad got cancer and I went to see him, I realised that these are they were lies, and actually none of it was true. But the most important thing is, when I went to my dad's funeral, I was carrying his coffin, and I remember my uncle being in front of me carrying the coffin, and one of my uncles being behind me. I couldn't really see anything, and I sat down, and my mind's going in loads of different places. And after I looked back, and there was just so many people. And not only that, there were so many people that I had no clue who they were. No clue. And I'd go round and I would say, hello, who are you? And they would tell me amazing stories about my dad. Stories that I'd never heard about my dad. And they were all good. They were all really about my dad helping them out or being kind to them. And, that's when it really clicked. I love my dad. I'm always going to talk up, and I'm always going to, put my whole heart into it. But when you have loads of people that he merely just touched their lives a little bit, that's when it really stuck to me that my dad was just such an amazing person. And, I never related to this film in that way when I was younger, because none of this had happened. And now that I've grown up and I've got to feel a certain way that this person's son now feels, when he starts to realise how amazing his dad is. Luckily for me, I got to understand that before he passed. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.